Okay, now we're going to look at the Safavid Empire, and we're going to look at the Mughal Empire here in part two. Um, it's northwest Persia, and it's a Shia versus Sunni battle. Um, Here, I must have asked, what attempts the Safavid do to bring Turkish? What was the battle significance of the Battle of Chaldiran, and what was its significance? Okay, it was in northwest Persia. It was a battle for everything. It was the Shia, who are the Safavid, are the Shia, and the Sunni, which is the Ottoman here in red. So the Ottomans versus the Safavids, and this will be the big battle between the two uh, sects of Islam, two divisions of Islam. Islamic cavalry is destroyed by Ottoman firepower. The Safavid cavalry cannot keep up. The Ottomans have superior cannons. Um, the significance of the Chalderan is, though, both sides lose a lot. The Ottomans can't maintain empire. The Safavid Empire can no longer move to the west. You'll see the Shia Muslims, who are the Safavids. The Shia are the Safavids. The Shia are the Safavids. You'll see their expansion stay. So be contained. So you see them today in the places that were the Safavid Empire then: Iran, Afghanistan, and parts of Iraq. Okay, so that's number three there under number two. The spread of Shia Islam goes no further west. Okay, now the Safavid rule over, let's look at some of the scenes of the battle. These are supposed to be paintings from this time period that show the impact of the battle. You'll see that the Safavid cavalry, you'll see what this guy is using. They're using, he's using a sword, but some of these guys are using arrows, and they're using swords and a few muskets over here. But the very fact that they are not using cannon like the Ottoman will be devastating to them. Okay. All right. Now, politics and war under the Safavid Shahs. Now, here in the Safavid Empire, remember in the Ottomans, what did they call their rulers? Yep, sultans. That's right, sultans. Here, under the Safavid, they call them shahs. So they've taken over a lot of Turkish areas, and so they're trying to control what they've got. So they give warrior nobility status, like the Ottomans had done, to these Turkish chiefs. They say, well, you're warrior nobility, we need you. Um, but they also balance them out by appointing a lot of Persians, which they are, the Safavid are Persians, to try to control. Plus, they bring in an army of slave boys brought in to be administrators. Yes, that's kind of like the Janissaries. And yes, they were part of a later power struggle, just like you're going to see with the Janissaries. Okay, and we're going to talk about that more later on. I think I've already mentioned it in part one that Janissaries don't want to change. Now, these guys, as some of you told us in your presentations, are a theocracy. The Shia becomes the dominant sect. It's taught in the state schools. The state, the government, the Safavid Empire supports Shia teachings and helps appoint Shia teachers, and they take active roles in the government. And so teaching in mosque schools becomes regulated by the government. So there is no separation of church and state like we have here. Instead, it's all together. How about the role of women under the Safavid? What's it like for them? Well, relatively speaking, it's negative. Sorry, ladies, it's negative. Women are subordinate to their fathers and husbands. I put surprise, surprise, that's a little sarcasm there. A very patriarchal society. Women are kept secluded, veiled, always more strict in the cities than it is in the rural countryside. Why? Because in the countryside you need your women to work, and so they're less secluded in the house and less veiled because they need to be out helping work. In what way were roles of women positive. Some women fought restrictions. They wore colorful robes, refused to be veiled. There are stories of wives and concubines influencing their husbands and rulers. And they do get some protected inheritance laws. Divorce is possible. What do I mean by protected inheritance? In other words, she has the right to inherit property even if her husband's not real keen on that. Okay? All right. The rapid demise of the Safavid Empire. Leaders are kept in seclusion. They become inept. Huh? Doesn't that sound familiar to us? Where did we just hear that? Yep, the Ottomans. We just heard it. Um, we also, one of the later Shahs, he kills all potential successors. Everybody who might be able to take his place, he has them killed. Well, we know what the problem of that's going to be, right? There's nobody to step in to take his place. We've heard about that too. You remember? Think back on it. Chapter, I think it was 19, I think it was 18 or 19. We talked about Russia. Yes, Ivan the Fourth did that. Ivan the Fourth. They're eventually beaten by a group of nomads in 1722 from Afghanistan. That sounds familiar. Getting beaten by nomads. They the Safavid eventually becomes a battleground for nomads, neighbors who want to take over. There also was contributing to the demise loss of trade income. You're going to see that as Europeans are moving in through the Atlantic and through the Indian Ocean trade, the Safavid will also lose um, power. Okay, so next up, our third great empire is the Mughal Empire. Okay, why was Babur able to defeat the Muslims of northern India? Well, he beat the Indians quite easily, even though he only had 12,000 people. By the way, he claims to be a descendant of the Mongols. That's often repeated, but I will tell you I've read some journal articles that really call that in to how much exactly these guys are descendants of the Mongols. It may have been, well, think about it a second. Why would you want to claim yourself to be descendants of the Mongols? Why would you want to do that? That's right. It gives you legitimacy. It makes you're descendants of these great warriors, then it gives you some legitimacy. They have superior firepower, which scared the elephants and often caused them to trample back through the Indian armies. And Lodi, who is in charge of the people of northern India, his men hated him and they had no problem changing sides. In fact, it is many scholars believe that the Mughals, Babur, had actually made contact with these guys and had been assured by at least half of Lodi's army that if he attacked, they would switch sides. Now, Babur is a good leader and a successful leader, but the greatest of the Mughal leaders falls to his grandson, Akbar, Akbar the Great. What was Akbar's long-lasting religious idea? He wanted reconciliation and cooperation with the Hindu princes. Think about this, guys. How do you think the Hindus and Muslims got along? That's right. Not that well, because the Hindus, at least from the Muslim eyes, look very polytheistic because they've got lots of representations of their main god. Okay, and so they see them as polytheistic. So it doesn't work real well. He does Akbar does encourage intermarriage. By the way, this is the empire during Akbar's reign. That he's This is as successful as it will get. You can see it stretches from modern day border with Afghanistan, grab part of Afghanistan, Pakistan, northern India, all the way over into modern day Bengal. He encourages intermarriage. He abolishes the head tax on non-Muslims. He says we're not going to tax Muslims. Or, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. We're not going to tax Hindus, extra, special tax. There'll be no special tax. Remember that it was one of the ways that the Arabs, when they came out of and first started taking over North Africa, had encouraged people to convert, was to put a special non-Muslim tax on them. He does away with that tax. And he also says that Muslims must respect cows. I've got over here a picture showing this promotion of intermarriage um, between Muslims and Hindus. Okay? And last but not least, he tries to invent a new religion. Now, there is some argument about whether this was actually he was introducing a completely new religion or whether he was just trying to work, whether it was just a philosophy. But anyway, he's trying to reconcile the two sides, um, the Muslims and Hindus. And after his death, the religion goes away pretty quickly. He does try to improve the role of women during this time. He encouraged widow marriage. He discouraged child marriages. Um, Remember, they're marrying girls off as young as 9, 8 or 9. Um, that will be a practice that will continue, but he tries to do away with it. He tries to legally prohibit sati, that is the throwing yourself. I'm sure you guys learned about this last year. It's when women throw themselves on their husband's funeral fire. Um, that he when they throw themselves, and then he has relief for women trapped in purdah. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but purdah, which means to be veiled from public. These were women who were kept in their homes and were either veiled, like you see the lady on the right, or just kept inside their houses so that they would not leave and could not go out in public. So he tries to do some things to help out women. Unfortunately, following his death, most of his reforms go away. And you'll see after his death, Akbar is about as good as it gets for the Mughals. They will start to decline. But we'll talk about that a little bit more because their real big decline comes after 1750. All right, what was their export? Their export was fine cloth. It was much desired in Europe. Um, they had brilliant techniques for weaving and dyeing of cloth. You'll see right here, this is a piece of Mughal clothing. I hope, nope, it would not permit me to put in the picture. I worked and worked, but it wouldn't let me put the picture in of some Mughal clothing. It's absolutely beautiful, absolutely beautiful. So what are 5 reasons for the decline of the Mughal Empire? Okay, number one, domestic problems. Um, there are domestic problems. They have ambitions, two ambitions. I don't even remember what that means. Isn't this awful? I gotta look that up. Um, Military conflict drains the treasury. We've seen that in other places. You're spending too much money trying to defend your borders and all that. They attempt to rid India, some of the later Muslim rulers attempt to rid India of Hindu influence. And obviously, guys, think of it this way. If I come up to you and I tell you, you will change religions, you will be just like me, how do you take that? No, of course not. You don't take it very well at all. I wouldn't. Would you? Of course not. So we have increasing religious tensions. You have threats from new groups, particularly outside groups. And believe it or not, one of the new groups that will be coming in during this time period are the Europeans. First the Portuguese, then the Dutch, then the English, and the French will all start to make their presence and their impact known. Okay? Last slide. What were 3 global connections of these empires? How do they connect to the big picture of what's going on in the outside world? Number one, all 3 of them failed to utilize European technology, particularly on any grand scale European military technology. They failed to match Europe's overseas expansion. While Europe is establishing colonies in the Americas, in Africa, and in Asia itself, these guys have stopped expanding and are not really trying to look outside. In fact, they're shrinking. And there are attempts of these Muslim empires to hold their own within the world. What can they do to hold their own, to continue to fight? All right. Thank you for your attention. I will see you in class.